Let's get some analysis now with our regular international security expert. He's also National Security Advisor at Bondi Partners, former advisor at the Embassy in Washington. Mark Watson, thank you very much for your time. What's your take on where the fallout from Afghanistan is, not just for the United States broadly, but for Joe Biden and his presidency specifically?
Thanks, Kieran. Look, there's no doubt that Joe Biden has taken a very significant political hit on the way things have played out for him in Kabul. And I do separate Kabul out from Afghanistan because I think the majority of Americans, including the majority of veterans, supported the decision to exit Afghanistan. But the way things finished up at the airport in Kabul, those lingering images of people clinging to aircraft, and of course, the catastrophic terrorist attack that killed 12 US servicemen and women, that is really hanging over this presidency. And the fact that there are still up to 200 Americans left behind, they will want to get that resolved and resolved very quickly.
It's an interesting paradox, though, between the majority, when the opinion polls in the United States ask, should they be out of Afghanistan, a majority have said yes, but when they look at the way that it's been managed, that's where the criticism lies. So in the longer term, do you see it settling at some point for Joe Biden as people support the overall aim, they don't support the way it's been managed?
Well, that's certainly the hope of the House Democrats. Remember, the US goes to its next major set of elections just over 12 months' time. The Democrats are hanging on in the House and the Senate by razor-thin margins. They would have been expecting to go to those midterm elections with a post-Trump tailwind. Instead, they're looking at going to those elections with a post-Biden headwind. And you can see that reflected in his popularity figures. His disapproval rating has gone up, his approval rating has gone down, and in particular, the handling of this incident. So as I say, he will be wanting to resolve any issues around Americans left behind as quickly as possible. The last thing he would want is anything that looks like Iran in the late 70s and the hostages in the embassy.
Indeed. And do you think that at the moment is a threat, is a risk? Particularly, I ask you in the context of the presence of Islamic State and other like-minded groups. It's not just the Taliban they've got to worry about.
It's a real issue insofar as I don't think anyone is really clear on this, Taliban 2.0. They're talking a good game in terms of trying to establish good relations, trying to do the right thing. At best, I think that is going to be a Kabul-centric Taliban. In the provinces, they won't have that luxury. The question will arise when someone goes, you know what, we've got a bit of a bargaining chip here with the Americans. We can drive a pretty hard bargain on whatever it is, whether it's foreign exchange, whatever it may be. So maybe we just hold on to these Americans a little bit longer. Now, I understand that there are very intense negotiations going on as we speak in Qatar. Senior US officials are there trying to find a way to negotiate with the Taliban to resolve this problem. But for the moment, I think it's hanging right in the balance of how this plays out.
Yeah, well, the other thing that's hanging in the balance is the geo balance, the geopolitical balance of China in relation to the United States. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, China and Russia obviously already are using this for propaganda purposes, as indeed are terrorist groups, pointing out this is the defeat of US power. Even the great US military can crumble in the face of this sort of rebellion or this sort of, resistance by the Taliban. But I think there's a lot of commentators in Australia as well asking, well, what's this mean for the US alliance and the diminishing of US prestige? I think that is way overstated. I think anyone who bets against the US economically or militarily is going to lose a lot more often than they win. And they will come back from this. And the next time there's a catastrophe or something that needs large-scale logistical or economic support, the country they will turn to is the United States, not China.
Yeah, it's very timely, isn't it? Because this withdrawal happens, 70th anniversary of ANZUS, and 20 years on from the deployment. And this Saturday marks the 20th anniversary of the attacks that precipitated it.
Yeah, it's for Joe Biden and his political futures, it's a terrible set of coincidences occurring here. Obviously, the 20th anniversary. The Taliban, of course, were very keen to resolve the issue in their favour in time for the 20th anniversary. But for Joe Biden, it's a bad look. And as I say, in terms of the political play in America, the Democrats will be looking at midterm elections, potentially not just with this hanging over their head, but a president where the economy really hasn't quite gone as well as they'd hoped. The unemployment figures haven't bounced back quite as hoped. There's a crisis on the southern border that's causing grief. So there's going to be a lot of issues here that will weigh very heavily on the Democrats going to the midterm elections.
Mark Watson from Bondi Partners, thanks as always.
Thanks, Kieran.